Of course. So welcome everyone. I really appreciate so many people coming to our session. Please make sure you're active in the chat box, and Leslie's here to answer questions in that chat box. And then also feel free to kind of shout out if you're really passionate about something we're talking about. So my name is Amy Backus, and we also have Chessa Emmons. She'll be presenting on a lot of these slides too. And we're really gonna focus on reaching our rural veterans. So we're really excited to kind of dig into this. Then we'll have time to talk about what that means for people that are working in rural areas, and then really just have time for an open discussion. So without further ado, we will begin. Chessa, I'm going to let you kind of have the stage and start with your portion of the presentation.
All right, thank you kindly, Miss. So hello and good morning, everyone. I just want to introduce myself briefly. I am Chessa Emmons. I'm the Be Connected Program Coordinator with the Arizona Coalition for Military Families. I am a military spouse, but I'm also born and raised in Southern Illinois, where it is cornfields and soybeans as far as you can see. So the rural community is super important to me, and I have been very fortunate to be able to assist the rural communities and the tribal veterans that really lie a lot in these rural communities as well. So I'm going to take the opportunity to quickly go through just some of the amazing rural projects we've been able to facilitate around the state over the last year. And then you guys will be hopping into a panel discussion to follow. So I know that's really exciting. Amy, did you want to pull up the slides?
Yeah, so I will. Leslie, do you want to pull up the slides for us?
I'll actually go ahead and do it really quick. Give me just 1 second.
Oh, I can do it if Leslie wasn't going to. I will.
Oh, right.
Right now.
Okay, can y'all see my screen here? All right, let's dive in. So I did just go over the agenda with you just ever so briefly. So let's just dive into some of these data pieces really quick. So here are some demographics about service members, veterans, and families that we've collected in rural areas. So we were able to take a specific approach with CDC guidance and part of our CDC project to identify high-risk populations across the state. And we were also able to do some data layering and identify where the really high instances of suicide occur. But I don't want to just hinge on that negative piece of data. I want you to guys feel very positive and empowered with the fact that identifying problem areas really allows us to be creative and intentional with developing solutions. So while we found that there are 5 specific counties that have the highest rates of suicide, and being able to identify the veteran population percentage within those communities, we were able to identify some other statistics as well. 65% reported a disability, 60% are retired, and only 40% are aware of the Be Connected program. So as we were able to launch these other projects, I want you to keep in mind the intention for the outreach and awareness portion being brought to these rural and isolated communities that maybe don't even know about the resources that are right in their backyard. So just keep that in mind as we're working through these different pieces. One of the projects I want to mention is the Rural Arizona Connects project. This project was primarily across Southern Arizona. It covered just about 13 of the 15 Arizona counties, but our real focus was accessing critical access hospitals and rural health clinics to connect them with one another, and also be able to facilitate connection for the service members, veterans, and family members that they serve, but that they might not necessarily know what resources to connect them to when they do come in and have a request that is outside of the realm of expertise of the people that are serving them. So we wanted to make sure we were kind of that supplementary unit, that larger safety net to say, okay, you don't provide assistance with financial assistance, but we do, so let us help you with that. Or somebody mentions not being able to find a job, you can connect them to the career navigation program, and they'll be able to work them through the pipeline and help them develop a lot of incredible skills to get them a really solid career, or even just help push them in the right direction. So we wanted to approach this specifically with these critical access hospitals and rural health clinics, and then COVID happened. So COVID really threw a wrench in it. These very isolated medical locations or these clinics, they already were very sparse with the services that they provide, with the amount of space that they have, the capacity they have to care for these people. And that was just, they were inundated whenever COVID happened. So that made it a little more difficult to be able to get in, but Be Connected had the opportunity to be that supplementary resource and say, hey, let us help you with these pieces so that you can focus on the pandemic. So you can focus on the services you provide on top of the pandemic assistance. We originally focused on trying to approach 9 critical access hospitals, 15 clinics, and at least 20 community partners. So we were specifically targeting areas that were really isolated. And when all was said and done, over about a year of the project, we were able to engage with 10. So we beat our goal with that. 18 rural health clinics. So we beat our goal with that as well. And then several community organizations. The really exciting piece is that we did all of this during the pandemic, during periods of extreme isolation, when all of these folks were really drowned out by the things that we were working on. So I think that really just demonstrates the point of Be Connected and having that holistic concept of saying, let us take these things off of your plate so that you're not having to stress and worry about it. And also likewise, us being able to connect them with their nearest critical access hospital or rural health clinic when they're calling in needing access to those resources that they do provide. So just since January of 2020, we were able to outreach over 75,000 people just through the Rural Arizona Connects project. That's not counting the other projects or the other outreach and training efforts conducted by the Be Connected team. But this 75,000 concentrated on the rural and isolated area. So we really focused on Nogales and Sierra Vista, Yuma, Greeley and Graham counties. We really focused on being able to get the word out to those folks about the Be Connected program. We also put out 2 billboards that were along highways in southern Arizona. So if you saw the Be Connected billboard about employment, about wellness, about getting access to healthcare, that really drove a heightened number of calls from the regions that it was in. So that's just an overview of the Rural Arizona Connects project. I want to jump quickly to the rural food insecurity effort, the COVID community support project we did as a pilot across northern Arizona in late January, early February. In light of our Be Connected door-to-door transportation project, we were trying to identify a spark in the community so that we could really get more transportation access to the people who really needed it. We received a grant for food insecurity, and I am so going to brag on our team at this time because I know we have Amy D, Leslie, and I think Kellyanne is in here as well. We all really teamed up, put our heads together, and within 26 hours we had developed a pipeline that we were going to push people through to be able to address food insecurity and transportation insecurity simultaneously, while also collecting data on high risk, increased risk populations. So we took the opportunity to collect demographics about the folks totally willingly. They were able to fill out request forms that helped us identify if they were having dietary restrictions that food boxes could not assist with. Also, what other barriers like employment insecurity that they might be facing and how we can connect them to those kinds of resources as well. So over a 2-week sprint, we were able to provide food resources to 118 households serving just shy of 300 service members, veterans, and their family members. And I'm really excited to mention that a lot of this was focused in rural and tribal communities. We have a lot of connections in these areas that were like, hey, listen, this is what's going on in our backyard. We need to find a way to address this. And so we were able to partner up and get it taken care of. Over 26% of the people that we assessed reported needing ongoing food assistance. So these are people that were not just having like a one-time issue where they need connection to food, but that they are consistently having to wonder where their next meal is going to come from. And that is just, that's way, way, way too many. Honestly, anything bigger than 0 is way too many for people wondering about a basic need such as food. So we really wanted to take the opportunity with this project to not only provide that acute support, but to create a more ongoing and sustainable model to address what's going on. We had a BWF COVID-19 support effort as well. This provided financial assistance to people who were impacted by COVID, whether that was a loss of a job, a reduction in hours, anything to that effect. We helped everything from paying mortgages to utility bills, providing funds for food, diapers, you name it. We had the opportunity to cover it. So we worked with our partners as well to engage those folks and refer them to our team so that we could get them taken care of. in that holistic model as well, it wasn't just giving some organization money to cover down on a debt owed by someone, but rather saying, okay, you were struggling with this, let's pull you in and see how we can get ahead of it and get you back on your best way so you're not having to say, hey, I need help with rent again. We wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to really engage with those ongoing resource needs. With this particular instance, I do want to mention, we were able to collect demographics on just shy of half of the population, but 93.4% of those that we did collect demographics on were tribal veterans. So I know that if you had attended the last session that we just talked about in the transportation barriers in the first round of breakout sessions, we did mention that the tribal community was really impacted during the pandemic and continues to be impacted due to the isolation, having to kind of close off and restrict incoming and outgoing traffic. So that really caused a big barrier in terms of resource access. And we were able to kind of supplement that by having our connections in the tribal areas that were able to assist with getting these resources to the people who need them. All right, I'm going to toss the ball over to Amy now so she can talk a little bit about this incredible cohort.
Thank you. And I can start sharing my screen for you if you want to let go, Chessa, if that makes it easier, so you can drop off if you need to. So this would be a great time to put the poll out. Sorry, excuse me. So just take a minute to talk or answer the question in the poll. So I'm just going to give a little bit more time to answer the poll. All right, a few more seconds. Got most of you. All right. So it looks like almost equal to northern and central amount of people, which that's really interesting. I feel like especially southern is kind of coming up close, but we have a lot more northern and central. I know southern and western have a lot of rural areas too, so I'm glad that we've got somebody from everywhere, and I'm looking forward to our just discussion later down the road. So thank you again for your presentation, Chessa. It's always amazing to go over these and see the data points in front of your faces and really understand what those mean and what we're kind of doing all the time when we talk about all these projects that we do. And I feel like it can be hard to keep up with all our different projects, but Chessa is really good at conveying how important they are and just how impactful they can be. So I really want to take some time to talk about Together with Veterans. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about Together with Veterans, but it's actually based in Colorado, and they are a rural suicide prevention program, and they recruit and they train and they help organizations and veteran supportive organizations to kind of lead their own programs to help prevent suicide in their areas. So we really partnered up with the Peoples Valley Fire Department that is working with Together with Veterans, and we started the Veteran Coalition of Central Arizona. So that really covers a lot of the Weaver Mountains area. And this is really amazing because not only do we have the support from the Together with Veterans program that also has other small rural organizations putting together their own programs. So we have top-notch support from a big organization, as well as being able to interact and discuss our challenges with other small towns and organizations doing similar work that we are. So we have really worked hard to start this Weaver Mountain Health Initiative project. And that's really working with the Together with Veterans program and the VCCA that we created, but also broadening that to the Weaver Mountains in general, and really making the suicide prevention more solicited and really focusing on those efforts of collaborating and understanding the issues that we're facing in specific areas and focusing on how we can get around those barriers and build those more sustainable communities together. So this is an example of one of the projects we do with rural areas, in addition to the one that Chessa had spoke about earlier. So we can really approach it in different ways. In some ways, the transportation is the biggest issue, and we can create different ways to mitigate those, but then we can also just work with them to help create their own solutions to these problems, because really the community knows what's best for them. So we are trying to make sure that we get all the information we need and support them in any way that's the most appropriate. So that is together with veterans, and if you want any more information too, I suggest you kind of look into it on your own and see all the different areas, that they are working with. And then also there is a Weaver Mountain Health Initiative website that kind of goes into more detail about exactly what those efforts are and different resources you can use within those areas. So I'm going to then put it over to our panelists. So unfortunately, we had a few panelists not be able to make it today. So we are blessed to have Holly Figueroa with us still, and she's going to kind of talk about some of her experiences as someone that works with rural communities. So I'm going to pass it over to Holly to kind of introduce yourself, and then we have a few questions to just prompt some conversation. So I encourage you all to use the chat box as much as possible, unmute yourself, and really just kind of make this about asking different ways that we can collaborate more and make this a more effective effort. Holly, go ahead.
All right. Nagwang talong va na Holly Figueroa bahan matiwa na talama na amhopi matiwa na tawangwa na sepalanga casino na navatuk obi amkita. Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Figueroa, and I'm Sun Clan. I come from the village of Sepalavi out on the Hopi Reservation, but I live and work here in Flagstaff. My pronouns are she, her, and I too also was born into the military. I actually have been living a military life for more than half of my life. Began my civilian lifestyle about 20 years ago. I was born, my father was Air Force, and I was born at Shaw Air Force Base over in South Carolina, and traveled the country through his service time. And then my husband was also in the Air Force. He was an F-16 crew chief, and so traveled with him as well. And then he is also from Hopi and cross-trained into radiology. So going from the flight line to the hospital. And then, things happened in the country and he was being called back to the flight line. I decided he didn't want to go back to the flight line. So he got out, and we decided to make our home close to our reservation here at Hopi. So we decided to live here in Flagstaff and have been here ever since. So thank you all for the invitation to sit in as a panel, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you all around some of the work that I do. I've been here with Health Choice Arizona for probably about 11 years now, started my way through the agency, landing through in the cultural competency role, and then transitioning out over onto tribal liaison. But a lot of my work in cultural competency really started to build on working with the different populations that we serve. And the veteran population was definitely near and dear to my heart. And so done a lot of work, and I still do today. And I'm really excited to talk with you all about that. So I actually, is it okay, Amy, if I share my screen? So I know I wasn't supposed to create a slide deck, but I just put some things together really quickly just to kind of think we're all kind of visual folks. And
oh yeah, I love it. Right? Thank you for doing that.
And so I really wanted to just kind of share some information with you all. So in relation to the work that I do, our Health Choice Arizona service area is in the northern region as well as in the central region of the state. So we do services all in this light blue area to also include our tribal communities. And so a lot of the work that I do is that I do a lot of collaboration with different agencies and organizations. One has been the Arizona Coalition for Military Families for a long time. I think I kind of was the squeaky wheel for a while with Tom and Nicola in relation to the symposium, and I'm really thankful for their partnerships. And they're all the people that have been really wonderful to work with, and we've done some really great things for sure. So that's who I am, and that's what I do. I can just talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've done in relation to veterans. My counterpart, my colleague, unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, Maria Esposito. She is also, she's actually the veteran liaison for Health Choice Arizona. And she was really upset she couldn't be here with us this morning. So between her and I, we do a lot of work to outreach to our veteran population within our service area. So she actually facilitates a quarterly health plan veteran liaison meeting. And so all of the health plans within the Access Service Delivery System have a veterans liaison. So they get together and they talk about issues and share information. So she's done a really great job in doing that. So if you're part of a health plan or if your liaison isn't participating, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to forward that information on to Maria. I know her meetings include also representation from the VA hospital. So a lot of discussion and planning happen there. We're actually planning a community forum to target our veterans in the Mojave County area. And so actually we'll be in Bullhead City on May 3rd, reaching out to the community to share information about some of the services and programs.
We may not see your...
No, I'm still on this slide here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And so, so May 3rd, Bullhead City will be in the community starting at 4 o'clock, and I'm happy, Amy, to share with you the flyer for that you can distribute to the participants on the call. Also, we will be doing some continued efforts. I know during COVID, we definitely did have to reach out to our membership who had chronic illness and serious mental ill designations to make sure that we were connecting and making sure that they were safe and healthy and were able to access the services they needed to continue their health. And definitely COVID, as everyone has mentioned, presented a lot of challenges to the work that we've done. We traditionally host an annual statewide tribal veteran symposium, and this here is an image of the very first one we held in 2019, and I actually planned this with two dynamic women, Shandine Tracy and Paulette Yazzie. Paulette is also a veteran, and she works for Congressman Tom O'Halloran's office. And Shandine, you all may know as working in Prescott. There are two really dynamic women, and we actually put together this symposium after the Northern Arizona Mental Health Symposium that we did in collaboration with the VA there in Prescott Valley. And there was a topic about tribal veterans. And so we thought that creating a space, an opportunity, an environment to reach out to tribal veterans across the state would be really helpful. And so we had over 300 participants. I think we had 40 plus providers who wanted to participate. Unfortunately, we couldn't accommodate everyone, but it was very successful. And this image here is an image of the 30 tribal Vietnam veterans who had not received their welcome home pin. And we actually hosted a welcome home pin ceremony for them. And so this was a very emotional event and day. It was really great, but I was really thankful we were able to get folks in so that people could process claims, they could do screenings. We had all kinds of activities available to veterans. And so we're hopeful that we can bring this back in the in-person model. We're looking at November of this year for sure. So we'll be planning that this past year in 2020. We didn't want to give up. And so we actually hosted a virtual session. And so we had many different sessions. I would say, I think overall engaging veterans, rural veterans virtually has been a challenge on many different levels based on connectivity, comfort, accessibility and ease is just has been a challenge. And so we're really looking forward to hopefully being able to bring this back in person.
Can you talk about some of the ways you kind of overcame those challenges you faced though, working with rural veterans specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. And it brings me to this next image here. Actually, there was some work with the Arizona Coalition of Military Families, the COVID grant. And Joy, I see you on the participant list. So I worked with Joy in outreaching to tribal veterans in relation to getting them some needs. We were able to get water tanks to some of the chapter houses in the region. We were able to get some of the needs met of the veterans. Some of our veterans were still using 5-gallon propane tanks to heat their homes or to cook with. They didn't have electricity, and so they would run off of generators and old generators. So I was very thankful. It was a lot of just kind of going back. And I think that has been the overall theme of COVID is we kind of have all gone back to the old way of doing things. So it was like getting on the phone and calling people and spending time to really hear what the needs were and what the challenges that they were facing, and even, bringing in the families, because sometimes, some of our veterans were older and didn't understand some of the things that were expected that they needed to provide, either over, just taking images of things. I mean, it was just really, it took some time. But I think if you have a champion who can, has those connections, that has the trust built with the communities, that was really the successful piece. It did take some time. And so, I mean, I don't know, we spent hours on the phone saying, okay, now take a picture. Now you can either text it to me, or you can, if you have access to an email, you can upload it and text it or email it to me. So we really had to spend a lot of time educating veterans and their families on how to participate in some of these programs. And I would say that, if there are any programs who are trying to outreach veterans who are requiring documentation, that can be somewhat of a challenge for some of our veterans in the rural areas, not having access to fax machines or emails or computers. That perhaps was probably one of the biggest challenges for sure. But so those were some of the things that we did, we just actually had to slow our roll a little bit and, get on the phone and talk to people. And that was really, I think, what really helped us be successful. Takes a little bit more time, but in the end, I think we were very successful, and veterans were very appreciative of the work, and time that was spent getting them the things that they needed to keep, them going on multiple levels. So this here is an image of a wood distribution that we did. We were able to work with the City of Flagstaff Fire Department, the Watershed Project, and we were able to target veterans, tribal veterans from different tribal communities, and coordinate actual delivery of wood to some tribal communities. We also opened it up to tribal veteran family members that could actually come to the staging site, because not everyone had a truck. Not everyone had, enough folks to actually start loading up wood. And I spent a couple of days up here in the mountain just loading wood for people that came in, and it's hard work. It's a lot of work. And those are some of the norms that folks here in the rural areas are used to keep themselves warm and also to cook with. The wood also serves purposes for ceremonial purposes as well. If they're hosting any kind of traditional or spiritual type ceremonies. The wood is a very important element, not only just for heating and cooking, but also to continue on their culture. So this here was an image of actually he's a Marine veteran, and his boys came and they were loading up wood, and we kind of got funny and silly with the pictures there. I have to hand it off to, and I think Miss Goldtooth is on this call as well. I saw her earlier, but this gentleman came to us all the way from, he came from far. I can't remember now exactly where he came from, but he is probably one of the most younger veterans in his tribal community that had the physical ability to load wood and get it transported. And he traveled actually for hours to get to the staging site to take wood back for the veterans in his community. So I was really thankful, and Joy, I think, actually made that connection. So we were able to get him loaded up with a ton of wood. He actually had a trailer as well. And then for some of the tribal communities, we loaded up dump trucks from local vendors here in the community. Some actually donated their entire time and their trucks to take wood out to some of the different tribal communities. But all of this was collaborated with the chapter houses, and really just, you know, having that trust and relationship built with those communities to make those things happen. And so a lot of time on the phone, and Joey could probably attest to the time that it took to be on the phone for sure, making sure that we were able to coordinate appropriately within the COVID restrictions, especially within tribal communities, because a lot of tribes were on stay-at-home orders. Some tribes were trying to negotiate legitimate types of donations, not only of PPE, but who was making the donations. So it kind of got pretty challenging to have access to some of the communities that we were serving. So we wanted to be mindful and respectful of the sovereignty of the tribes. And so to have that transparency and level of communication was really important. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, actually, I was just gonna say, Holly, if you want, we can switch over to the discussion. And I think that will just kind of be perfect right after your presentation, and we can kind of open it up to anybody that has specific questions that they want to ask. Do you mind if I share my screen again?
No, not at all. Oh, just really quickly, I'll just say that this image here, we did also some food distribution as well. I heard the conversation about food insecurity. That has multiple, you know, can lead to multiple disparities. So food is really important. So we've actually hosted a couple of food distributions in partnership with Real Hope Inc. out of Prescott Valley. But we were very thankful to, again, target our veterans, also be able to include our veteran partners in Prescott Valley. These gentlemen came out and they were amazing. And just being able to see, I mean, we had people crying, thankful that they were able to feed not only their families, but also, you know, some of their relatives and other folks, neighbors. People were willing to come in and actually pick up boxes and take them to folks who could not, you know, didn't have a car, didn't have the room to have these food boxes available to them. So a lot of, you know, collaboration, I think, because we all want to be good partners and working with one another. So that was the image there of the post there in Prescott Valley.
Didn't know I was still muted. Well, as always, it's so impressive. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, I think like the firewood too, is there's so many specific things that you might not think about that people need. And I know a lot of folks are here from Northern Arizona, so we do experience more of that cold weather. And then Southern Arizona has a lot of that extreme heat. So I really want to we only have a few minutes left. Our session will end at 11:20. Then we'll have a break before the last general session. But I really want to open it up to everyone in attendance to ask questions. You have a lot of people from our team, and Holly is a wealth of knowledge, and there's so much that she does every single day, every second, that is just collaborative and helping support. So please unmute yourself, go into the chat box, let us know anything.
We've set it now where they can unmute themselves if they want to.
Perfect, thank you. And then I have this too. This is our contact information and everything. So I'll leave that up while we have our final discussion. And then Holly, I think I put your, oh, you'd put your email in the chat box as well. So feel free to reach out to Holly directly if you have any questions that you don't want to talk about on this. But I know a lot of you are here from Northern Arizona, and I would love if you spoke about the issues that we kind of face as a rural area, different ways, like Holly was saying, the technology hasn't been what we could really move to when we're in rural areas because they didn't have that availability. So we had to go back a little bit, less technology and more face-to-face or calling or really trying to figure out how to connect with these people. So Rocky?
Yeah, hey, I was just gonna say, yeah. You know, sometimes the distances you got to travel, people are kind of spread out, and then you know, just finding people like in some of these areas, you know, it's not easy to get to, even if you know the general area where they're at. You know, the weather can be a problem at times.
Yeah, and Rocky knows going out to see people in really rural areas. Holly definitely does too. We have people here that are willing to go as far as they need to get people.
Hi, could I ask a question?
Of course, Art.
I was just curious. I've done a couple stand downs in some of the Indian communities, and they seemed very hesitant to interact with people outside of their community. I mean, do you have any advice on how to kind of break that barrier?
Are you talking about people in rural areas tend to be a little hesitant?
Yes, but in a lot of the Indian communities that I've gone to in rural areas.
Yeah, I'll let Holly speak on that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And actually do a training on tribal veterans to your point that you're asking specifically. A lot of times, you know, there is time that needs to be spent building relationships with tribal communities, just based on some of the traumas in the history of outside agencies, entities coming into tribal communities. So there can be a bit of hesitation, but there's also, I think, an understanding of some of the different cultural norms in relation to how we engage and interact and communicate with one another. So I think what I would recommend or suggest is perhaps taking some time to really look at the communities that you're trying to work with and really truly understand from a cultural perspective some of their cultural norms and some of the history, and really focus on the communication piece. And a lot of times that takes a little bit longer to do before you actually start, you know, coming away with action items and starting to do things that can be sometimes, you know, some of the small things can make a huge difference. And so I would recommend for sure, you know, in either looking at doing some training and education and awareness, and then, you know, perhaps finding a champion that you can work with that is part of the tribal community that can also offer insight and also some recommendations on being more successful with your tribal communities for sure. I'm also happy to help, you know, more specifically, if you want to talk about it a little bit more, please don't hesitate to reach out and I can definitely connect with you.
Holly, there was a question specifically if there are resources on the Health Choice Arizona website. Are you aware of where we could direct people to that?
You know, I saw links asking that up too, and Maria is more of the official veteran liaison, and so I will get that information back to Amy so she can share that with the group. But I'm not sure, Link, if you can see if there is on the page. I know he's putting some stuff in the chat there in relation to veteran on the web page. So I can get back to you on that from Maria to the group.
Wonderful, thank you, Holly. And Of course, we would have been so happy to have Maria here too, but I appreciate you, Holly, taking over the panel and kind of doing that yourself. We are only kind of 2 minutes to the end, so I want to give people time to throw any last questions out. But I also want to echo what Holly was saying. I think the biggest thing when approaching the smaller communities are the ones that are really used to relying on themselves, right? And that's where they get a lot of pride from, because that's what they have done to help support their community, from tribal nations to super rural areas like Peoples Valley or different areas that I've worked with in the White Mountains and across northern Arizona. So I think it's showing that you genuinely want to learn and help, and taking the time to build a genuine relationship with them, understand their needs that are specific to them, as opposed to going in and telling them what they need, or giving your idea of what will make everything better. So including the conversation to have representatives from that community so that they have a voice to make those changes, because people know their community better than someone from outside their community. So they are the experts, and learn from those experts and lead that expertise as your way to go forward. So I just wanted to reiterate that, Holly, because I think that you made that point really well. Yep, I think Chessa said in the chat box, we can see it. Now, how far apart, we are better together. There's no one size fits all approach here. So thank you for joining us to this breakout session. We are going to have about 10-minute break before the final words be said. So take a break to go to the restroom, get some water, and then of course we'll kind of stay on here if anyone has any last comments or wants to put anything in the chat box.